AITA for handing my wife her wish list before she left for a girls' trip? She was telling me she loved me while planning every detail of the betrayal I only discovered by chance. It was a Tuesday, one of those ordinary, slow nights in our small Denver kitchen, the kind where the dishwasher hums in the background and the smell of tomato soup fills the air. Nothing was out of place until I noticed Madeline huddled over the kitchen table, scribbling in that little black notebook as if it owed her money. I walked over and leaned on the chair beside her. "What's that?" "Another journal entry about how I load the dishwasher." She didn't even smile, just covered the page with her hand and slammed the notebook shut like a trap. "Caleb," she said sharply. "Don't." "Okay, easy." I was joking. She stood up quickly, clutching the journal to her chest like it was sacred. "It's not funny. It's private." "Private?" I let out a sarcastic laugh. "It's a notebook. You're 10 feet away from me in the kitchen, not locked in a safe." Her face tightened. "I'm allowed to have things that are mine, Caleb. Not everything is open for you to snoop through." "Snooping," I repeated, a chill creeping into my voice. "Is that what I do now? I snoop on you." "You're always watching," she shot back, stepping away. "You hover. You ask those little questions and act like it's just affection, but you really want to know everything. Every thought, every move, every feeling." "I'm your husband," I exploded. "Of course I want to know what's going on in your head when you've barely looked me in the eye all week." Her hands were trembling slightly, but she didn't back down. "Why do you think I don't want to talk, Caleb? I don't want to be interrogated every time I sit down to think." "That's not thinking, Madeline. You're hiding." That's when her eyes went cold. "Hiding," she repeated in a low voice. "You think I'm hiding because I want some space for myself? Maybe if you didn't make everything about you, you'd realize not everyone processes things out loud." I took a step closer, my heart racing. "So now I'm selfish for being concerned? For asking why my wife shuts down every time I try to get close?" "You're not concerned, Caleb. You just want to control," she said. "That's what this is about. You feel me slipping away, and you panic, thinking you can fix it all with questions." I went cold. Her words cut deeper than any shout could have. She turned toward the hallway, still holding the journal as if it might dissolve if she let go. "This is my space," she said again, her voice lower now. "Stop trying to take it from me." Then she was gone. No slammed door, no drama, just the soft, final click of the latch. I stood there in the middle of our kitchen, heart hammering in my chest. Our kitchen. The same one where we used to slow dance while the pasta cooked, where we'd spent nights laughing at bad movies and pouring a second glass of wine. Now it felt colder, smaller, as if the walls themselves were choosing sides. And on the table, her uncapped pen still lay there, still warm, as if the argument wasn't over, just paused. 3 days passed in a fog. We spoke, yes, but only when logistics demanded it. Dinner's on the stove. "Buddy needs his medicine. You're late again." Our words became tools, not connections. So, when Friday came and Madeline dropped her bag on the couch like she still owned the place, I decided I couldn't keep pretending. We were in the living room, the late afternoon light stretching across the hardwood floors. I was near the bookshelf, aimlessly straightening a row of old paperbacks, anything to keep my hands busy. "I'm going to Aspen next week," I said, keeping my voice steady. Madeline was sorting through the mail on the coffee table, barely looking up. "Oh, the annual guys' trip." I watched her slowly. "Yeah, but I'm going alone this time." She froze. Her eyebrows drew together in a frown. "What do you mean, alone? We've gone together for the last 4 years." I kept my voice firm, but inside, my chest felt like a live wire. "I need some space. Just a few days to clear my head." Her lips parted in disbelief and twisted into a smirk. "Clear your head from what, Caleb? From me? Because I write in a journal like half the women in the world." I walked to the fireplace and leaned against the mantel. "Don't twist this. It's not about the journal. It's about how I haven't felt like your husband for weeks." She stood up, arms crossed. "That's not fair. It's also not fair to live in the same house and feel like I'm one step away from being locked out. You treat me like a stranger who moved in by accident," I said. Madeline let out a dismissive laugh. "Because I asked for privacy? Because I didn't want you snooping through pages that are for me. You acted like I was invading a crime scene. You slammed the door in my face like I'd crossed some sacred boundary." I countered. She took a step forward, her eyes flashing. "Why is it sacred?" It's where I process things, Caleb. Not everything I feel needs to be cross-referenced in your playbook. I sighed. You're entitled to your thoughts. I'm not asking for a transcript. But don't lie to me by calling this normal when we both know something is wrong. Madeline was silent for a moment. Her voice dropped. Do you think I'm lying to you? I met her eyes. I think you're hiding something. She didn't deny it. Instead, she turned and walked to the window, her hands clenched at her sides. I can't believe you're doing this, she whispered. I'm not running away, I said. I'm creating a timeout before something breaks for good. She spun around. Caleb, are you turning this into something it's not? I raised an eyebrow. Then tell me, what is it? Her silence filled the room like a fog. She blinked rapidly and looked away. It's just things I've been thinking about. That's not an answer, Madeline. Well, it's all I have right now. The room fell quiet again. Buddy's tail thumped lazily against the floor from the hallway, the only sign of life between us. After a long moment, I said quietly, I'll be back Tuesday night. She stared out the window again, her reflection pale in the glass. When did we stop trusting each other? She asked, almost inaudible. I shook my head. I'm still trying to trust, but you keep giving me reasons to doubt everything. Her voice broke. Do you think I'm cheating on you? I didn't answer. Not directly, anyway. I just looked at her, as if I could find the truth if I stared long enough. I just need a few days, I repeated, grabbing my keys from the table. That's all. Then I walked past her, slow and steady, without slamming any doors, because I didn't need noise to make my point. The silence I left behind did it for me. When I walked through the front door on Tuesday night, the smell of garlic and rosemary hit me like a brick wall. I stopped in my tracks. The house was softly lit, warm and golden, like something out of a catalog. Candles flickered in small glass holders all over the dining table. A bottle of wine was already breathing next to two polished glasses. The plates were set perfectly. Madeline had even folded the napkins into little triangles, something she hadn't done since our 3rd anniversary. I walked in slowly, the floorboards creaking under my boots. Buddy ran to me, tail wagging as if the last few days had never happened. I patted his head absently, my eyes scanning the scene. Madeline appeared from the kitchen in a light blue dress I hadn't seen in months. Her hair was curled, her smile soft, too soft. Hey, she said, closing the distance between us. Welcome back. I looked at her like she was a painting hung slightly crooked. This is a surprise. I figured you'd be tired, she said, placing a warm hand on my arm. I wanted to cook for us. The word hung in the air like perfume. Us. I watched her slowly. It smells good. She smiled wider, stepping back toward the table. You can sit. The food's ready. We sat across from each other. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, glazed carrots, it was all there. Every one of my favorites. Wine? She asked, already pouring before I could answer. We clinked glasses. She held my gaze as she said, to new beginnings. I swallowed. I let the wine hit my tongue before I replied. Sure, new beginnings. As we ate, she chattered on about the grocery store, a coworker's dog, a weird dream she had about a hot air balloon. I just nodded, chewed, nodded again. And then, halfway through her second glass, she set her fork down. I love you, Caleb, she said. I know I've been distant. I know I've been hard to reach. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I looked at her, and her eyes were wide, almost tearful. I can't lose you, she added, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. You're my everything. I put my fork down, too. Madeline, I'm here. No. She extended her hand across the table and squeezed mine. But you almost weren't. Aspen scared me. I just kept thinking, what if you didn't come back? I just needed space, I said quietly. I know, and I respect that. I really do. It's just, she paused, biting her lip. I gave her a small smile. It's okay. But inside it wasn't. Something about it all felt wrong, like it was rehearsed, like she'd stood in front of a mirror and timed the tears to the rhythm of the wine pour. Her hand on mine was warm, but her eyes were too careful, too calculated. I forced a smile, played the part. I'm happy to be home. She let out a breath of relief. We can be us again now, right? Sure, I said. But as I took another bite of chicken, it felt like I was chewing on cardboard. Because for all the warmth in the room, between the candles and the wine and her perfectly placed smile, something felt cold. Too perfect. too polished. It was as if a storm had just passed through, and instead of debris, there was a dinner table set and waiting for me. And that scared me more than any argument ever had. The next morning started like any other. The crisp Denver air, the coffee brewing, Buddy whining at the back door. I was in the kitchen, watching Madeline rush around like she was 10 minutes late again. She had stuffed so many work papers into her tote bag that the zipper barely closed. And as usual, she was skipping breakfast. "Don't forget your scarf," I said, handing it to her as she ran for the door. She took it without a word, flashed a quick smile, and disappeared with a hurried, "Thanks, love." A few seconds later, I heard the crash. Not the garage door, not the gate. Paper, plastic, a thud, and the chaotic sound of things scattering across the driveway. I went to the window. Madeline was crouched by her car, desperately gathering papers and folders from the ground. I saw the corner of her black journal peeking out from under a folder, like it had tried to escape, but didn't quite make it. She scooped everything up in a rush, shoving it all back into her bag. The journal was the last thing she grabbed. Then she tossed the bag into the passenger seat, slammed the door, and sped off as if nothing had happened. I stood there for a second. Then I went outside. The garage was quiet now, a few loose leaves scattered about, and a single pen that had rolled away. But my eyes were fixed on the spot where her journal had fallen. It was still there. She had left it behind. I bent down and picked it up slowly, holding it like something sacred, or maybe cursed. I glanced around. No neighbors in sight, just the distant hum of traffic and the cool morning air pressing against my face. I took it inside. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened it. Page after page of her neat, hurried script, as if she couldn't get the thoughts down fast enough. I didn't even have to look for it. The notebook fell open to exactly where she'd last written. Dreamed of him again. The same apartment, the same smell. It felt so real. We sat on the couch, our knees touching like they used to. He asked me if I missed how things were. I lied. I said no. But God, I did. I turned the page. He still knows me better than anyone. Caleb doesn't even ask the right questions anymore. I blinked. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I turned another page, hoping, no, begging, to find something mundane. A grocery list, a to-do list, a harmless complaint about work. But no, there it was, in her unmistakable cursive. Spend a night with my ex. The sentence didn't just sit there. It stared back at me, like it knew exactly what it had done. I leaned back in my chair, the journal still open in my lap. Everything around me faded away. The ticking clock, the kettle letting off steam, Buddy whining for his food. None of it could reach me. I picked up my phone, my hand steady in a way I didn't expect. I took a picture of the page. I took another one of the page before it and the one after. I attached the images to an email from my attorney. Subject, private matter. Body, I need to talk about this. Attachments. Keep this between us. Then I sent another message to a number I hadn't used in months. Grant Hollis, a local private investigator a friend had used in a custody case. Caleb Nolan here. I need discreet surveillance. Let's talk today. I stood up slowly. My body was moving on autopilot, as if my mind had taken a back seat to my heart. I put the journal back exactly where it had fallen, by the garage door, near a broken leaf, as if I had never touched it, as if I hadn't just watched my marriage crumble without a single shout. Then I got in my car and drove. Not to work, not to a coffee shop, just away. Because when trust breaks, it doesn't shatter with a loud noise. It cracks silently, like a bone inside your chest you never knew could break. The house felt hollow that night, as if something essential had been drained from it. Maybe the sound, maybe the trust. I sat on the edge of our bed, phone in hand, reviewing the messages from the private investigator. Grant had already replied, efficient as always. He said he'd start surveillance the next day. He attached a list of known addresses linked to the name in Madeline's journal, Dylan R. Martin. That name stuck in my mind like a splinter. I hadn't recognized it at first, but now I couldn't forget it if I tried. A knock on the doorframe. I looked up. Madeline was standing there, her hair still damp, her robe tied too tightly at the waist, as if she were holding herself together with fabric. Her face was guarded, her eyes watchful, her shoulders tense. "You're quiet," she said. I nodded, my thumb still swiping across the screen. "Long day. You've barely looked at me since you got home." I glanced at her. Then back to my phone. That's not true. She entered the room slowly, carefully, as if the floor might betray her. It is. And I know why. I didn't say anything. She crossed her arms. You've checked out, Caleb. I can feel it. It's like you're here, but you're not. Like you're just waiting for something. I turned off the screen and set the phone on the nightstand. Then I looked directly at her. Madeline, are you imagining things? Her laugh was sharp. Don't you dare gaslight me. I remained calm, steady. No, I'm accusing you of pulling away while pretending nothing is wrong. That's worse. Madeline, I said softly, not everything revolves around you feeling cornered. Maybe I'm just tired. She let out a dismissive scoff. You're not just tired. You're calculating something. I can see it on your face. You think I don't know what your silence looks like. I walked toward the bathroom, pausing in the doorway. You're not the only one who's allowed to have space, remember? She followed me a few steps. Are you hiding something? I didn't turn around. I don't have the energy for an interrogation. Her voice hardened. So now I'm the one interrogating you. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I turned slowly, meeting her eyes. Madeline, if you have something to say, say it. If not, I'm going to take a shower. She stared at me, jaw tight, as if she were holding back words sharp enough to draw blood. But she said nothing. I stepped into the bathroom and closed the door behind me. The water roared from the faucet, steam rising quickly, but nothing could wash away the feeling that we were circling something we could no longer name. Back in the bedroom, I could hear her pacing. One step, two, a pause. Then again. I wanted to know what she was thinking. I wanted her to say something reckless, to explode, to admit she'd stopped caring. But I wasn't going to give her that. Not yet. I needed more than emotion. I needed proof. I needed control. Because if I said one wrong word now, she'd bury it before I could ever dig it up. So I let the water run, and the silence between us stretched even thinner, like a taut string just waiting to snap. The bell on the coffee shop door chimed with the kind of false enthusiasm only small local places manage to keep alive. I stepped inside and scanned the room. Grant was already there in a booth in the corner, coffee in hand, a satchel beside him. He didn't wave, just gave me a short, unreadable nod, like everything else about this meeting. I slid into the booth across from him. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. You sure you're ready for this? He asked. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. Grant reached into his satchel and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He placed it on the table, keeping his hand on it for a second longer than necessary, as if giving me one last warning. She's been busy, he said, and not just in her head. I didn't reply, just took the envelope, undid the clasp, and pulled out the first photo. It was like a punch to the gut. There she was, Madeline, laughing, a full-on smile, her arm linked with a man I didn't recognize at first. They were standing in front of a townhouse with blue shutters. She was wearing the scarf I'd given her last winter. His hand rested on the small of her back as if it belonged there. Dylan. I moved to the next photo. Another angle. This time her hand was on his chest, laughing as if he'd said something that made her feel young again. Next photo. Different day, same address. She was arriving in the morning. No work bag, no ID badge, just her, a coffee in one hand, and what looked like a pastry in the other. Her expression was serene, relaxed. I looked at Grant. She told me she was in the office. He nodded. She wasn't. She left early 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Each visit lasted over an hour. I flipped through the rest. Printed logs, dates, times, license plates, photos of the entrance to Dylan's complex, receipts from a nearby deli, 2 iced coffees, one with almond milk, hers. It was all there, clean, precise, undeniable. What else? I asked, my voice dry. Grant took a sip of his coffee before answering. She's careful. No overnights, no hotels, no obvious public displays. But the intent is all over it. I looked at the last photo. They were sitting on a park bench facing the lake. Her head was resting on his shoulder. His hand was in her hair. No word in the world could spin that into innocence. I slid the papers back into the envelope and closed it. It didn't feel like sadness. It felt like strategy, like I was watching a plan unfold that I wasn't supposed to see until it was over. Grant broke the silence. You want me to continue? I shook my head. No, I have what I need. He studied me for a second. You're taking this well. I met his eyes. Because she didn't make a mistake. He raised an eyebrow. This wasn't a moment of weakness, I said. This was planned. She didn't fall into something. She chose it, over and over again. I stood up, envelope in hand, and placed a $100 bill on the table. Thanks for your time. Grant gave a short nod. If you need more, I've got eyes ready. I turned for the door. I won't. The next move was mine now. Outside, the cold hit me hard, the kind of wind that doesn't care what you're wearing. I walked to my car with a different kind of weight in my chest. Not confusion, not sadness, but clarity. And beneath it, something colder. Not rage, not fire, but something worse. Resolve. That evening, the house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels staged. I walked in the front door and immediately felt something was wrong. There was no dinner on the stove, no sound of music from her phone, no lazy hum of the TV in the living room. Just the hollow sound of a suitcase being zipped shut. I followed the sound upstairs. She didn't hear me at first. She was kneeling by the bed, folding a sweater and placing it carefully into an already full suitcase. Her travel bag was on the dresser, her toiletry kit open. She was wearing a loose cardigan and jeans, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face calm, a rehearsed kind of calm. Madeline looked up, startled. Oh, hey. She hesitated, getting to her feet. I was just about to text you. Yeah. I asked, walking into the room. About what? I'm going on a girls' trip. Last minute. Brittany invited me. Her summer house outside of Boulder. She was talking too fast, her hands fidgeting with the zipper. You didn't mention it before, I said, my voice controlled. It just came up, she replied, forcing a smile. I watched her, letting the silence stretch. I looked at her suitcase, then back at her. Don't forget your wish list. The color drained from her face. What? The journal, I said simply. Page 76. Bullet point. Spend a night with my ex. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain, looking down at the street below. I picked it up after it fell out of your bag. You were in such a hurry you didn't even notice. She took a step forward, her eyes wide. Caleb, now wait. I hired a private investigator, I said, turning to face her. He followed you. He took pictures. Every morning you told me you had a board meeting. You were parked in front of Dylan's place. She swallowed hard. I can explain. No, I said. You can't. Her voice broke. It didn't mean anything. Don't, I said sharply. Tears welled in her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you. You didn't stumble into his arms, Madeline. You walked into them. You wrote it down. You planned it. She took a step toward me, her hands trembling. Caleb, please. There was no inappropriate relationship. It doesn't matter, I said. You erased this marriage the second you wished for someone else. For a moment, she said nothing, just stood there breathing heavily, blinking back tears. I didn't know how to tell you, she whispered. I was confused. I didn't answer. My voice was firm. You were selfish. You wanted two lives, one with him and one with me. And now you have neither. I turned from the bedroom and walked down the stairs. She followed me. Caleb, where are you going? I opened the front door and stepped aside. You're going to need to finish packing somewhere else. She stared at me, dumbfounded. Are you kicking me out? I'm not kicking you out, I said calmly. I'm telling you the truth. You don't live here anymore. You just hadn't heard it out loud yet. Please, she said, tears streaming now. I made a mistake. No, I said, meeting her eyes. You made a wish. She stood frozen in the doorway, her suitcase beside her. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just waited. Eventually, she stepped outside, and I closed the door behind her. Not with anger, not with fire, but with finality. The next morning, there was no wind. The sky was gray, the kind of stillness that felt fake, the kind of morning where something had to break. I didn't go to work. I didn't check my emails. I just got in my car and drove, the engine low, the tires crunching softly beneath me. I knew exactly where I was going. Grant had given me the address in a single text the night before. A 2-story brick house in Edgewater. A quiet street. Not the kind of place where neighbors ask questions. I arrived just after 9. The driveway was empty, the curtains drawn, but the porch light was still on, like someone had forgotten the sun came up. Eventually, I got out of the car, walked up the steps, and knocked on the door. Firm. Calm. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. I waited. Still nothing. Then I rang the doorbell, and stepped back, crossing my arms. Through the frosted glass, I could see a shadow move. Someone was definitely home. "Dylan," I called out. "We're not going to do this the coward's way." No response. I walked around the side of the house, my shoes crunching on the gravel. The back patio gate was unlatched, swinging slightly in the breeze. I pushed it open, and there he was, barefoot, sprinting across the lawn, a phone in one hand, his shirt half on. He froze when he saw me for a second, then bolted. "Hey," I yelled. "Stop running." But Dylan didn't stop. He tore across the yard as if guilt had lit a fire under him, crashing through bushes and vaulting over a half-rotted fence like he'd done it before. I ran after him, my feet pounding the ground, my heart racing, not from the exertion, but from the fury. By the time I reached the fence, he was already disappearing down the alley on the other side, kicking up dust like a scared kid trying to get away. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. The truth didn't need to be caught. I already had it. I stood there for a few moments, catching my breath, staring into the quiet he left behind. Then I turned, walked back through the yard, past the empty patio chairs and the broken wind chimes, and got back in my car. I sat behind the wheel, gripping it tight, watching Dylan's house shrink in the rearview mirror. He hadn't said a word, but I heard everything. His flight was louder than any confession, and his silence was all the confirmation I needed. I didn't chase him for answers. I chased him to see if he would run. And he ran, exactly like I expected him to. Back at home, I poured myself a glass of water and stood in the middle of the kitchen, the same kitchen where Madeline used to make pancakes on Sundays and laugh at nothing. That version of her didn't exist anymore. That version of us was gone. All that was left now was the part where I finished what she started. No more second-guessing, no more negotiations. This wasn't a crack in the glass. It was a clean break, complete. And I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. It was a Sunday afternoon in late fall. The air had that stillness about it. Dry leaves rustled across the pavement, caught in a wind that wasn't strong enough to lift them. I was cleaning out the garage, organizing boxes that didn't need organizing. Buddy barked once. I looked up to see what at. Then I heard the knock. I froze. The front door. I knew before I even rounded the corner. I knew the sound of her knock. When I opened the door, there she was. Madeline. Hair pulled back, no makeup, her eyes puffy. One suitcase, and no rehearsed expression on her face. "Hey," she said softly, her voice frayed at the edges. I didn't speak. She took a deep breath, her gaze fixed past me, as if just by crossing the threshold, the rest would fix itself. "Can we talk?" she asked. I leaned against the doorframe. "About what?" Her eyes filled instantly. "About everything. About what I threw away." "Dylan left," she blurted out. Her face contorted. "He moved. He said it was too complicated. I ended it. I swear, Caleb. I told him to never contact me again." I looked at her, really looked at her. Her shoulders slumped. Her voice was softer than I'd heard it in weeks. But the pain, the regret, that wasn't a performance. She shifted her weight. "I know what I did, and I hate myself for it. I was selfish. I got caught up in something I didn't even understand until it was too late." "That's a lie," I said calmly. "You understood it perfectly. You fantasized about it. You wrote it down. You planned it, over and over." She shook her head quickly. "It wasn't real. None of it meant anything. It was like chasing something that died years ago." "But it didn't stop you from chasing it," I replied. Her tears started to fall now. "I made a mistake." I raised an eyebrow. "Mistakes are accidents, Madeline. What you did wasn't an accident. You cultivated it, you protected it, you hid it." "I got lost," she whispered. "I thought I could control it, keep it separate from us. But I couldn't. Because there is no us anymore," I said. "Not after you let him in." She wrapped her arms around herself, taking a small step forward. "Caleb, I don't want him. I want you. I want our life. I want to fix this." I studied her. The hope on her face. The vulnerability in her eyes. The desperation. "You can't fix what you shattered," I said, my voice low. "You broke our trust, and now you want to patch it up with excuses." "I don't expect it to go back to normal," she said quickly. "I'm just asking for one more chance. A chance to prove I still belong here." I was silent for a long moment. Then I said, "You don't." She swallowed hard. "You don't belong here, Madeline. Not anymore. You didn't just cross a line. You redrew the whole map and left me off of it." She covered her face with her hands, crying without restraint now. Please, she sobbed. I know I broke you. I know I broke us. But I still love you. I didn't flinch. That's not enough, I said. Love doesn't erase betrayal. It just makes it hurt more. She looked at me like she wanted to scream, but no words came out. Just shaking shoulders. Just silence. I took a step back, just enough to make it clear. You're not coming in. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her coat, nodding slowly, as if she was finally understanding. I'm going, she whispered. I just thought maybe there was still something here worth saving. I met her eyes. There was. You just weren't the one protecting it. She turned and picked up her suitcase with trembling fingers. As she walked down the steps, she didn't look back. I closed the door behind her, not with force, not with anger, just with the sound of finality once again. But this time, I wasn't the one leaving. The courtroom didn't look like a place where love ends. Just beige concrete walls and fluorescent lights that hummed louder than they should. I sat at the long oak table, a pen in my hand, papers spread before me like a final exam you never wanted to take. Madeline was at the opposite end of the room, alone. Her attorney had stepped out for a moment. She wore a gray blazer, her hair pulled back too tightly, trying to look composed. But her eyes gave her away. Red, tired, and glassy. We hadn't spoken since the day she left the house. We didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. A few of our mutual friends were in the back of the room. Tom and Renee from our hiking group. Lexi, who worked with Madeline at the nonprofit. I hadn't invited them. They just showed up. Maybe out of loyalty, maybe out of curiosity. I didn't turn to acknowledge them, but I heard a whisper. I never thought Madeline would do something like that. I didn't even hear who said it. It didn't matter. She heard it too. Her shoulders tensed, her eyes dropped to the floor. The judge cleared his throat and began reading through the terms of the settlement. Standard procedure. Division of assets. No kids, no protracted battle. Just the paperwork that was left. Madeline's attorney came back and handed her the pen. She didn't look up when she signed. When it was my turn, I didn't hesitate. My signature came out cleaner than I expected. No shaking hands, no second thoughts. Just a period on a sentence I didn't write, but one I chose to end. The judge signed, gathered the documents. You are both officially divorced. Proceedings are closed. That was it. 8 years of marriage reduced to the click of a rubber stamp and the call for the next case, even colder than the last. Madeline stood up slowly. She didn't look at me as she gathered her things, but I watched her. Not with anger, not with sadness, just with clarity. She walked out without a word, the sound of her heels echoing on the tile until they faded completely. I sat there for a moment longer. Not because I needed to, but because I could. Because I wasn't carrying her weight anymore. 3 days after the divorce papers were stamped and filed, I got a text from a number I hadn't seen in a long time. Haley, hi. Heard what happened. I'm sorry. If you ever need company or wine, my patio's still available. No pressure. I remembered her instantly. Madeline's friend from college. The one who always showed up to our dinner parties with thoughtful gifts and better stories than anyone else in the room. She and I had always gotten along well. Maybe too well, but the line was never even close to being crossed. I looked at the message longer than I should have. Then I typed back, wine sounds good. That night, I drove to her place, a small brick house on the east side with a lemon tree trying to survive the Colorado air. The porch light was on, and the smell of rosemary and something grilling hung in the air. Hey, stranger, she said, opening the door. She was in jeans and a thick cardigan, barefoot, with a glass of wine already in her hand. I smiled. Still drinking your Pinot Noir? She grinned back. Still pretending I can tell the difference. We sat in her backyard under a string of low-wattage lights. A record was playing softly on her speakers. Billie Holiday, I think. There was an ease to it, something I didn't know I needed. She poured me a glass. You seem lighter, she said. It's a weird thing to say. I shrugged. It doesn't feel weird. We talked for a while. Nothing heavy. Just catching up. A new job she had. A dog she was thinking of adopting. The fact that she'd learned to make sourdough during lockdown, but still couldn't get it to rise properly. Eventually, the conversation slowed, and then she said, You didn't deserve what happened. I looked into my glass, swirling the wine slowly. It's over now. She sensed it. Still, people always say they were shocked. I wasn't. That made me look up. I saw the way she looked past you. Haley said quietly. For the last couple of years, it was like she wanted a different life, but didn't want to admit it. I let that sink in. You weren't the only one who noticed, I said. Haley smiled just a little. Have you thought about what's next? I shrugged, taking it 1 minute at a time. She held up her glass. To unexpected chapters, she said. I raised mine to meet hers. To better ones. We clinked softly. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was calm. Her eyes lingered a little longer than they had before, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't look away. And that was the end of my story. Madeline said it was just a mistake. She begged, she cried, and she said Dylan meant nothing. But she still chose him, more than once, behind my back. Comment. This story is a tough one, and I know it might bring up a lot of feelings for many of you. What I really take away from this is how crucial it is to trust that quiet voice inside of you when something feels wrong. Choosing to protect your own peace isn't selfish. It is a profound act of self-respect. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to set a firm boundary, even when it hurts. We cannot control other people's choices, but we are always responsible for how we respond and care for ourselves afterward. Healing is not about erasing the past, but about accepting the truth without letting it define your future. It is about learning that your well-being matters more than being right or winning a fight. Remember to be gentle with yourself through this process. New chapters can only begin after the old chapter is truly closed. I hope you always choose the path that leads you to your own peace. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.